Hello and welcome back to the Parc Fermé Parlay podcast with Kieran Downey. It's race week once again. It's the start of a triple header, which is going to be fairly intense. And I'm intrigued to see how these go down, especially because 2 out of the 3 tracks, it's incredibly hard to overtake on. I'm of course talking about the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix, the Monaco Grand Prix, and we're rounding things off with the Spanish Grand Prix, which also, to be fair, is pretty difficult to overtake on. I know they tried to fix it with that final chicane, but even at that, it's still a little bit difficult. But we're not here to talk about that. We're not even here to talk about Monaco. We are kicking things off with the Imola Grand Prix, or its official title, the Formula 1 AWS Gran Premio del Made in Italy dell'Emilia Romagna Grand Prix. Probably butchered it, but try say that 5 times over. Obviously, with it being race week, we're here to make our predictions, and I don't want to be too negative. I don't want to shit on Imola because it seems to be already having a bit of a hard time. It's probably getting dropped from the calendar. I would be quite upset if Imola went. I'd be happy to see it on a rotation rather than just losing it completely. And my reasoning for that is that it's a proper driver's track. It's a proper racetrack. It's not a street circuit. It's not a hybrid like we're getting with Madrid, which honestly looks horrendous. I've seen that video that was released by the organisers of the Madrid Grand Prix, and I am actually, one, shocked that they decided that that was a good video to post. And 2, I don't really like what I've seen so far of Madrid. The layout looks awful. But we're not here to talk about any of that. We're here to make predictions about Imola. And as I said, I'm going to try and not shit on it because it is an incredibly difficult track to overtake on. It is so narrow and these cars are so big. So I'm trying to stay positive, and I'm going to try and make these predictions a bit interesting because I do feel this is going to be one of those races that where you qualify, you probably are going to finish there. Do you know what I mean? Now, first up, with pole position, I'm going Max Verstappen. I cannot believe that Max Verstappen has got the most poles out of any driver this year so far. That doesn't feel like a sentence that should be said. It doesn't feel like it should be a truth. However, it is, which is wild. And it just really feeds into the fact that you can never count Max Verstappen out. He will just put in some absolutely incredible laps. And it comes out of nowhere. You know, you might see them struggling through practice sessions and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And then just out of nowhere in quali, he's stuck his car on pole. So there is that. You can never count him out. And as I said, this is a proper racetrack. This is a Max Verstappen track. It's very fast, flowy. It's kind of, I'd put it in the same sort of vein as a Suzuka, just those old school racetracks that I just know that Max loves. I think the Red Bull is and will be somewhat better suited to this kind of track, and I think that we'll probably see a pretty stunner of a qualifying from Max Verstappen. As I said, it's a track he absolutely loves. I think it'll all just come together quite nicely on Saturday for Max. Now for P3 in the race, I don't know how delusional this is, but it did feel quite delusional when I wrote it down. But I've gone pure vibes with this one. I'm going Kimi Antonelli. I am going Kimi goddamn Antonelli. If I cannot get the Italian national anthem from Ferrari, which I don't think I will because they are absolutely shocking this season, my hopes lay with Kimi Antonelli. He's performing absolutely incredibly, way better than I think any of us would have expected, and his quali pace is good. He got pole in Miami for the sprint. Like, he's only just getting quicker, getting a bit better. Yes, he still makes mistakes. Yes, he's still a rookie, but I have faith that we could see Kimi Antonelli on a podium, and if not for his home race, then when? I'm putting it all in on Kimi for a P3. I think if he can get a banger qualifying in, he's got every opportunity to be on that podium. And I think it'll just come together quite nicely for Kimi, I'm hoping, this weekend. I think the only thing that would make it better is if he did drive for Ferrari. But they're a shit heap at the moment and he doesn't, so what does that matter? Now, P2 in the race, I'm going Max Verstappen. And listen, I do think he's incredibly quick around circuits like Imola, and I do think that that track will favour Red Bull slightly, and, you know, he will get a decent performance in. However, I do think, and this is kind of giving away my P1 spot, but I do think that, we'll start the race and he will just have a certain McLaren all over the back of him, and I think it maybe will come down to the pit stops, and that's where he loses that win. We've seen it before last year when we got to Imola. Lando Norris absolutely was chasing that man down, chasing Max Verstappen down in the closing stages of that race. I don't think it'll get to that point. I don't think he'll really open up a gap, but I do think that he will lose out, and I do think it is just going to be that who I've put for P1 is just going to be all over the back of him, all over him like a rash, and something like the pit stops is where it all comes out in the wash, and that's where he loses his position. For P1, I've gone Oscar Piastri, and I kind of swithered about whether or not I wanted to put Oscar and whether or not I should put Max, but as I said, it will be slightly cooler conditions. It will still be hot, and the ability of McLaren to cool its tyres down, I don't think will be as big of a problem for the other teams because it's not going to be as hot. So their tyre issues and everything, I don't think tyre problems will be a huge issue this weekend. I do think that Oscar is incredibly good at the moment, and I do think he's going to make it 4 on the trot. I think it's his 4th win in a row coming this weekend. Out of the 2 McLaren drivers at the moment, he is my favoured. He doesn't seem to make any real mistakes. He's so quick. He just knows what he's doing. He's an incredibly smart driver. And as I said, I do think that he will just cling on to the back of Max and manage to gain that position through some form of, whether it's through the pits or whether he just makes a bold move like Oscar quite likes to do. But I'm putting Oscar Piastri as P1. Now, for a couple other predictions, I'm going with a double VCARB points. And the reason I'm going with that is I think VCARB they quite like Imola, to be honest. They always seem to run quite well here. Hadjar is obviously an incredibly good driver and is incredibly promising. I think if he can get a decent quality appearance, a week Q3, I think he's laughing. And I think we definitely have Isaac Hadjar scoring points this weekend on our hands. I don't see Liam Lawson getting knocked out Q2. As I said, I think that VCARB is the VCARB quite like Imola. They always, as I said, perform pretty decently here. And I do think that this will be a weekend where Lawson manages to get a wee point in. I think, listen, at most I think it'll be a P10, but I'm hoping that the team will have had a little bit of a word with him and say, you need to get a bit cleaner in your racing. Like, you can still make the bold moves and everything, but you have to make them stick and they have to be clean. You can't be, spinning drivers off. You can't be spinning Fernando Alonso off into the barriers. Do you know what I mean? I do hope that he has a pretty decent weekend because I'm banking on a double VCARB points. For my next prediction, I'm going with a Q1 knockout for both Alpines. And this is no disrespect to Pierre Gasly, who we know is an incredible driver, and no disrespect to Franco Colapinto, who's obviously jumping in the seat in place of Jack Doohan for the next 5 races. This is more of an issue with the car. I don't think that car is going to run particularly well around Imola. I had quite good feelings about the Alpine car this year, and I've kind of lost them all. Take Jack Doohan out of it, I've not been massively impressed by Gasly over the past couple of races, so I think it is an issue with the car. I think they're driving just an incredibly mid car, and I do see a world where they're getting both knocked out in Q1. I could see Q1 being the likes of Alonso, both Alpines, probably Bortoleto, probably Hulkenberg. I could see that being our Q1. My final prediction is with George Russell. And I think it's another top 5 finish for George Russell. He's running incredibly well this year. I actually think he's finished in the top 5 in every race. Is that correct? So, Australia P3, China P3, Japan P5, Bahrain P2, Saudi P5, Miami P3. Yep, I'm putting it in. Another top 5 finish for George Russell. Surely he can't finish in the top 5 every race this year. Surely. Regardless, I'm putting him as my another top 5 finish for George Russell. So he's either got to get P4 or P5, and my prediction comes in. I'm locking that in. He's incredibly impressive so far this season, and I did not expect this from George or Mercedes. Like, I know George is a good driver. That Mercedes I had serious questions about after practice, but they seem to be running fairly decent across every track we've been to so far, and we've had a big spread of different tracks. And Mercedes just seem to be doing all right. I'm putting it in. I'm confident with it. I'm confident with a P5 for George Russell. I think he could definitely do a pretty consistent sweep of P5s. I mean, it's already pretty impressive that out of the 6 races we've had, he's got in a P5, a top 5 finish, in every one so far. So, and that is everything from us. We'll be back over the race weekend with our thoughts and feelings on practice quali and our race review coming after the Grand Prix. Let us know your predictions down in the comments below. Enjoy the rest of your day. Love you. Bye.